Hi, I'm Mary, a librarian and book reviewer with a focus on stories written for kids, tweens, and teens. Today, I am joined by Kristin Nilsen, who grew up in California and Minnesota, listening to the radio, watching Brady Bunch after school, and reading after bedtime. She's the author of Worldwide Crush and the Scott Fenwick Diaries, and you can hear Kristin every week on the Pop Culture Preservation Society podcast. Welcome, Kristin. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So tell us a little bit about Scott Fenwick and how this story came about.
Scott Fenwick. Oh my God, I love Scott Fenwick. So the Scott Fenwick Diaries is my latest book. It's a follow-up to my first one, Worldwide Crush, but it's the same characters. It's a continuation of the story, but I did write it as a standalone novel because when I started writing it, Worldwide Crush had not yet been picked up by a publisher. So that was a tricky needle that I had to thread, but I think it worked. I think it's okay. So it came out just recently, July 22nd. I call it Baby's First Rom-Com, and it's sort of inspired by my own profound cluelessness in matters of the heart in seventh grade. It's very hard to describe because it's very much a slice of life novel. Slice of life novels about the everyday things about growing up are hard to have an elevator speech about because they don't necessarily have a hook because they're about everyday things. But those everyday things are really, really dramatic in the life of a seventh grader. So I've been saying that it's about a crush, a bulldog, a bar mitzvah, and a sleeve of gas station donuts.
It's a really good description. And as I was reading it, the characters are just so rich and vibrant. And I could see my seventh grade head also. I was like, oh, I remember this feeling and how the gravitas of all of it.
Oh, it's so heavy. Everything is so heavy. And I feel like there might be, I always tell people I have a seventh grader living in my head. That's how I got my first agent, actually. She's like, tell me a little about you. I'm like, well, I have a seventh grader living in my head. And she was like, boom, I'm signing you based on that alone. And I just think that I didn't forget all of those very strong feelings and fears, all of the angst, all of the uncertainty. The story in Scott Fenwick begins when Millie gets a note passed to her by a boy in social studies for the first time ever. And that seems like a really great thing to happen, right? Except that it's never happened before. And she is suddenly paralyzed with fear because she has no idea what step one is. What is step one? What do I do first? And then to your point about the characters, so what does she do? She has to call on this sort of adorable cast of characters to help her decipher the entire thing. They become her crush team. They help her analyze every word of every note, and then they have meetings to decide what action she will take. She's not doing this alone. And so she has her bestie Shauna. She has her neighbor Tibbs, whose yard is adjacent to Scott Fenwick. So her role in the whole book is to get an invitation to Scott's bar mitzvah for Millie. She has her overweight bulldog, Pringles, who plays a huge role in this story. And then she has two cranky grandmas, one of whom just got banned from the Burger King. And all of these people are part of Millie's story. Because I think people forget that when you're in seventh grade, you do not exist in a vacuum. You live with parents and grandparents and siblings and teachers and gym teachers and custodians and the people who are not your friends. You're surrounded by all of these grown-ups and they all have some sort of influence over your life. And to write a book that doesn't have those influences feels to me disingenuous.
They're all so fun. And as you're describing them even now, it's like, oh yeah, everybody has those people in their lives.
Yes, for better or worse.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all there.
Did any of them come from real life? Are they
All of
inspired
them.
by people you know?
All of them. 100% of them. In fact, when my son read it, it's his birthday today, actually, he's turning 23 today. And when he read it, he called me he was almost indignant. He said, "Are you the mom?" He said, "Everything the mom says is something that you would say." And it's true. I am the mom, but I'm also Millie because I think I'm trying to resolve seventh grade. But the two cranky grandmas are definitely based on real people. Part of it is my grandma, part of it is my husband's grandma. My husband's grandma actually did get banned from the local Burger King. So very little in this book is made up. Everything comes from something. Even the neighbor Tibbs is based on a good friend of mine whose name is Amy Tibbs. And we call her Tibbs because I have so many friends named Amy. I have like five Amy's in my life, and so she is Tibbs. And she strikes such a presence. She gives off very strong Miss Beadle vibes. If anybody's a Little House on the Prairie fan, she looks like Miss Beadle, she acts like Miss Beadle, and everybody loves Miss Beadle. That's everybody's favorite character on Little House. And one time she said to me, if I could just be my real and true self out in the world, I think I would just walk around in prairie skirts and Birkenstocks all the time. And a character was born. And I knew that Tibbs would have to be, there would be a 13-year-old Tibbs somewhere in the Scott Fenwick Diaries.
I love that. So what made you decide to be a writer? Is that something you've always done or did you fall into it?
Oh, that's such a funny question. Oh, and I actually forgot to say that there is a real Scott Fenwick. So we can get to that later if you want. Like when you talk about real characters, oh, there not only is Scott Fenwick based on a real person, that's his name. Like he's actually a person I had a crush on. And that got a little sticky when the publisher decided to name the book The Scott Fenwick Diaries. And they were like, so is there a real Scott Fenwick? Yes, there is. Is there more than one Scott Fenwick in the world? Yes, there is. Did anything in the book actually happen with Scott Fenwick? No. Because what happened between me and my crush with Scott Fenwick is exactly nothing. Everything is from my fantasies, my fifth grade fantasies. So I had to track him down. It took me a year because he's not on social media. I finally found him and I had to say, hey, remember me from fifth grade? It was really, really embarrassing. And then explained to him that I had a crush on him, which of course he did not know because nobody says that out loud. And I just, my whole, when I'm speaking to him, I'm like, don't scare him. Like, don't make him call the cops. I don't want the FBI knocking on the door. Like, it's okay. Everything's okay. So luckily he's been super gracious and he finds the whole thing funny and he's actually very flattered by the book. Okay, back to your question. The question was, did I always want to be a writer? No. In fact, I think I spent my whole life pretending that I wasn't a writer. Most importantly, I didn't call myself a writer ever, as if that was some sort of line I would not cross. That being said, when I was a child, I was winning writing contests. I was labeled a good writer. And then when things got difficult, like people started giving you constructive criticism, what I internalized was, oh, I guess I was wrong. I guess I'm not good at this. I thought I was good at it, but apparently I'm not because they're saying I should change this. So I'm not gifted at this. And then I abandoned it completely. And then as I grew and became an adult, every every job that I had, I was the person you came to when you needed to write something. Whether that was an email to a colleague or whether that was a grant or whether that was promotional material, I was the person they came to, but I'm still not calling myself a writer. Then I went to an astrologer and I was probably in my mid 30s by this time, maybe even late 30s. I was probably my late 30s. And she said, in 9 months, you're going to be an artist. And at the time I was taking guitar lessons and I knew one song. I could play Let It Be. That's the only thing I could play. And I was like, oh my God, in 9 months, am I going to be a rock star? I can't believe it. Like, that's such a rapid rise to the top. I can't believe it. What? That did not happen. I still can only play Let It Be. It's the only song I can play. Um, but I walked into a Great Harvest bakery and they had a big sign up for a national essay writing contest. And the theme was why I loathed the 70s. Loathed, get it? Because it's a bakery, it's a bread store. And I not only did I write an essay, I won that thing. It was a national essay writing contest and I won it. And so from there, I started writing personal essays and getting them published online. And then after several years, a friend of mine who was a novelist wanted to schedule a very serious meeting with me. And she sat me down and she said, Kristin, I want you to write a novel. And I said, I can't. I don't write fiction. And then her famous last words were, do it anyway. And I was kind of scared of her. So I said, okay, I'll try. And the seventh grader was unleashed. That was the beginning. So it really wasn't until I've been writing my whole life. I didn't call myself a writer until I was in my 40s.
Oh, what a great friend to give you
Yes,
that tough love
I
of
know.
like, just do the thing. Just do
Do it
it.
anyway. Do it anyway. I don't care what you think. Do it anyway. I dedicated Worldwide Crush to her, actually, to Annie, who said, do it anyway.
I love that. And I
Mm-hmm.
also really like that the two books that you wrote kind of dovetail with each other without having to be read in sequence. So Scott Fenwick stands alone. And then there's also like little bits of references back to the first book. So it
Mhm.
gets readers interested in that, even if they haven't read it already, but they don't feel lost, which
You
is
won't be
great.
lost. Yeah. And that's actually another astrologer story. So this time it was a palm reader. And I said to the palm reader, I'm writing this book, but Worldwide Crush hasn't been published. How do I write this book? Is Worldwide Crush ever going to get published? And she said, well, I can see in your palm that it probably will, but I think you should just write the book as if it's already published. And that's what I did. She said, act as if, just act as if it's published. And I did. That was the permission that I needed to just sort of believe in the fact that this is going to happen. But I also have the insurance policy. I'm not stupid. I made sure that there were enough nuggets in the Scott Fenwick Diaries so that if it didn't get published, that people wouldn't be lost.
Yeah, we really accomplished that very well. And it is a delightful story, especially because there are so many like series novels for kids. It's
Yeah.
nice to have one that just can be by itself, so you don't have to commit to the whole series at once.
Right. Hmm.
What made you want to write stories for this age group in particular?
Um, I became a children's librarian. I'm a children's librarian by trade. I've been in and out of libraries and bookstores since 1992, essentially. Um, and I became a children's librarian, I think, because of the huge outsized impact that the books that I read as a child had on me. I'm still sort of chasing that high of building a reading fort and getting inside my reading fort and reading The Cricket in Times Square. I'm still to this day, I mean, talk about resolving things. I'm still trying to resolve that. Um, but like I said before, I think why do I remember seventh grade so strongly? Why do I have all these feelings so close, so accessible to me? I think that's what I'm here to do is resolve those things within me, and I'm doing it by writing these books. And the thing that's so interesting to me is that no matter who is reading it, whether it's an adult or whether it's a child, they always say something about themselves. They always say, oh, it made me remember when I had a crush on so and so. I swear, even a 13-year-old will say, it makes me remember when I had a crush on Jack S. Right? That might have been 6 months ago. But everybody is fine. They're using the word relatable. And that pleases me so, so much because it means that my experience and whatever I'm trying to resolve is mirroring sort of a universal thing that is happening out there too.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite character in this book?
It's so funny. So as I said, the characters in the Scott Fenwick Diaries are the same ones as Worldwide Crush. And I just got the funniest award for Worldwide Crush. It's called the Outstanding Creator Award, and they're known for having these really nichey categories. It's not just best book or best children's book. They're super, super, super nichey. And I just won the award for the best supporting character for Millie's Grandma Cheryl. So Millie's grandma Cheryl's the one who gets kicked out of the Burger King. She's banned from the Burger King. She wears a Target bag on her head at night so that she doesn't get frizzy hair. She doesn't drink coffee in the morning. She does a shot of Mountain Dew. All of these things I think are making people embrace Cheryl. They just love Cheryl. And Cheryl really becomes a support system for Millie. There aren't enough grandparents in children's books. I love a good grandparent character. And so Cheryl provides the comedy, but she also provides the compassion in a way that Millie's mom can't. Because as you know, when you turn 13, sometimes moms and daughters are kind of in loggerheads. They're starting to, mom is still trying to parent you like you're 9, and you're trying to not be parented at all. And Cheryl, grandma characters can take a step back. They've been through this before. They don't have a stake in turning this person into a functioning human being. They can just be grandma. And so, really, Grandma Cheryl is the one who can be like, I see you, I get you. And she can be there for Millie, even in her shenanigans. Like when her phone gets taken away, Cheryl's like, I'll get your phone for you. And everybody loves Cheryl. So I just won the award for best supporting character, and then I got an honorable mention in the same contest for the cutest character, which was Pringles, Millie's bulldog Pringles, which has, like I said, Pringles has a very big role in the Scott Fenwick Diaries.
I know, it's so great. And what a cool award to have it be
I
so
know.
specific to that.
Isn't that great? I love it.
So, as you're designing all of these characters, do you
Mhm.
have a board that you use? How do you keep track of all those specifics? Because those are what really make the characters who they are, but I feel like it's a lot to keep track of.
I don't have one single method that I use. My methods evolve. They were different for Worldwide Crush. They're different for Scott Fenwick. They're different for the book that I'll be writing soon. Um, I really function with stories first. I collect all of these things that I observe, hear, things that happen to me, things that my son says. I have notebooks that I've been jotting things down in for years and years and years and years. Um, and that's why everything in Scott Fenwick is really coming from something true, like Grandma Cheryl getting banned from the Burger King. And then, so it's these stories that I have that exist. I just have to decide who is the person that they happen to. And so, obviously, if my husband's grandma gets banned from the Burger King, it's going to be a grandma character. It's not nearly as funny if it's a kid or just a rando, right? It has to be a grandma who gets banned. And then that becomes the seed for who Cheryl becomes. That everything starts with Cheryl at getting banned from the Burger King. Her whole character starts with that moment. Um, but as far as the other characters are concerned, I have sometimes I'll use index cards. Sometimes I'll use digital index cards. Sometimes I will just write their stories in like longhand in a notebook and then, I'll lose the notebook for like a year and I can't find it and drama ensues. I mean, that stuff like that happens all the time. I'm like, how will I know what Tib says if I can't find my notebook? So, to answer your question, I guess no. Girl, I guess no. It's just I keep track of things in a variety of ways. I people always ask the question, are you a plotter or a pantser? Oh, I'm definitely a pantser. I would love to be a plotter. I would love to be organized. I would love to have outlines. And I do. I do all of those things and I do not follow them. I have a graph. Oh God, I wish I had it so I could show you. I have the most beautiful graph that I made of the rising action in the Scott Fenwick diaries when, here's a peek of something that happened and then, oh no, you tumble down to the ground. And it was done with different colored markers and I did some collaging. I cut things out of magazines. It was beautiful. And nothing in that graph happened. Nothing at the end, nothing that I graphed actually stayed in the book. So I do a lot of things that go nowhere.
Yet, they go nowhere yet.
That's
Maybe
right.
you'll
That's
use them
right.
for something else.
That could be the next book. Always,
Yeah.
always. Hmm.
So, as you're talking about all of this and your preparation for writing the book, all of your notebooks and things like
Hmm.
that, where did this particular story come from? How did you prepare to write it? And what does that process look like for you, at least for this book, even if it's not for all of them?
Well, like I said, it's a very slice of life book. It's very everyday, and that's because it comes from my own experience. So this crush that I had on the real Scott Fenwick in fifth grade, I I I moved in the middle of the year in fifth grade, which I always say, parents, please don't do that. Don't make your children switch schools in the middle of the year. That's so cruel. That's like the biggest tragedy of my life. Um, and so I'm scared. I have no friends. I'm super lonely. And here's this beautiful boy who sits in front of me with this, long flop of shiny and nutmeg colored hair that flops down in his face. And he has these to say that his eyelashes are long is the understatement of the century. Like, I just lived for the teacher to pass out papers because then he would have to turn around and hand me my paper and I could see those eyelashes. And so to prepare, I literally channeled myself. I just had to channel my brain in fifth grade praying for the teacher to hand out papers. And then I have to figure out how do I explain what those feelings are in words. And that's kind of what I think my job is to explain my feelings with words so that you feel the same feelings. And when people say that this book is relatable, I think, oh my God, we all had the same feelings. We all had them and we weren't saying it out loud. And so to be able to put words to those feelings is very, very satisfying. And I think it does resolve something within myself because so many of those crushes, well, so many, all of them, usually, none of us are married to the person we had a crush on in fifth grade, let's be honest. All of those go nowhere. They're all unrealized. And so they're all unresolved, unless something dramatic happened. But for the most part, they're all unresolved. And so I think as I write and I put words to these feelings and I help other people identify those feelings and remember them, we're all resolving, we're getting some closure. because we as adults can stand and observe children having those crushes today and be like, haha, isn't that cute? It's more than cute. It's really important. And it's not because it's about having a boyfriend. That's not what it is. It's that we are learning how to be a person in the world. We're learning how to have a relationship. We're learning how to be in love. We're learning how to do what comes next. This is a really important part of coming of age. It's not about being in love. It's not about romance. It's not about finding a partner. That's not what it is. It's about the learning experience that we all go through when we're these little people. Nobody is born knowing how to do this. We all have to do it for the first time. Everybody talks about, your first time being sex. Well, what about the first time somebody passes you a note? Well, that's an important first time when you're like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do next. No idea. And if I do it wrong, I might have to switch schools.
You can never show your face again.
Nope, I'll have to leave. I'll have to switch schools.
As you're talking about all this unresolved things that happen for grown-ups reading this book, absolutely. And also for the seventh graders who are reading this and experiencing it themselves. And I feel like having this book is a way for them to kind of manage those feelings and realize that they're not alone in those thoughts and feelings. And for those grown-ups who never really got to resolve that, to realize that, yeah, that it's okay. You had these feelings.
Yes.
The person who wrote this book had those feelings. You're not in a vacuum, and it's okay that you had those feelings. So now that you did that, you can move on to the next thing, like you said.
That's right.
Um,
You're normal. And all of us, all we want is to be normal. Everybody just wants to be normal. I mean, be weird. Everybody be weird. But we all want to know that we're okay. And I think 100% of us, including the readers, like you just said, think that they're the only ones who don't know how to do it. And everybody else appears to know how to do it. And you're like, God, what is wrong with me? No, it's not you. We all don't know how to do it.
yeah, and a really fun rom-com too. Like you said, like a beginner rom-com, just
Yeah.
settling into like all of the silly things that we do when we feel those feelings.
Baby's first rom-com.
What would you tell to authors or readers who are embarking on their own personal journeys, whether it's writing or something else? What advice would you give them based on the things that you've experienced?
I was just on a panel recently where they asked what advice you would give to somebody who wants to write for this age group. And so I'll focus there because my answer to them was watch the movie Eighth Grade, which came out in I think 2019, either 2018 or 2019. It's the Bo Burnham movie. It is to me it should be required watching for everybody writing for middle graders or young teens, teens and tweens, because it so perfectly shows the uncertainty, the dangers that lurk in middle school, which we might think are silly, but they're not at all silly. Like your whole existence is on the line. Am I accepted or am I not accepted? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Do I have friends? Do I not have friends? Do I have enough friends? Do I have too many friends? Do I look right? Am I cool? Am I not cool? Which lunch table do I sit at? This movie is almost like a case study. And yet it's not a rom-com. And it's not even a comedy. They're going to call it a comedy, but it's too it pulls on your heartstrings too much to be a full-on comedy because it's very, very real. It's extremely real. And there's a lot to be learned from not just reading books, but watching movies and TV shows that have these characters and when they do it well. And eighth grade is one where they do it really well. My family was recently out of town, and so this means that it's time for the Kristin Film Festival when you get to watch any movie you want, but you don't have to negotiate with anybody. So every night I watched a movie that was just a Kristin pick, and they all fell into the same category. It was eighth grade, Lady Bird, coming of age, Booksmart, coming of age, Little Miss Sunshine, growing up and family. Um, all of these books have to do with us trying to get to the next stage of life. I'm very, very interested in what the growing up experience is like and how we get to the other side. And I didn't do this Kristin Film Festival on purpose. I just chose movies I wanted to see and I was like, oh wow, look, this is really where I live. I want to see how people get to the other side and all the pains that it takes to get there. And so, that's not craft advice. That's not So often people will say, oh, get used to rejection or get a thick skin or get a writing partner. Those are all really practical pieces of advice. I say watch some really good movies about the growing up experience and see if see what pulls on your heartstrings, what makes you cry. There, I don't think eighth grade is supposed to make you cry, but I cry because it's speaking to me. It's really speaking to me, and I feel so much for people going through it.
It's a hard time, that's for sure. And
Mhm.
it's good to have books that are written specifically for kids going through all of that because it
Yeah.
helps navigate a little bit that experience too.
Yeah, and helps. I think it's really important too for grown-ups to watch those because, and I'm speaking as a parent here, I think it's very easy for us to fall into the parent role where we really aren't thinking about that. We're more thinking about should and shouldn't. You should be like this. You should do this. You should behave like this. I don't want you to wear that. Instead of taking a step back and getting inside our kid's head. I just did on my Substack, I published an interview with an 11-year-old named Shazi. And this is something I want to do regularly is post interviews with kids because I think that we throw away their words far too often. And I asked her things like, what do your parents not understand? What do you want people to know about you? How do you feel about not having a phone? What does it mean to you when other people have phones and you don't? And she just got the opportunity to rant at her parents, truthfully. And I get to write it down and show it to the world so that people are a captive audience. Like, let's listen to hear what she has to say. Is everything grounded in reality? No. But it's our job to sort of figure out where we can step in and where we see her and where we honor what she sees, even if it's not completely grounded in reality. But we have to honor it to a certain degree, or we're never going to get anywhere together.
What a great project. How wonderful for her to have that opportunity to speak authentically and then for you also to showcase the fact that like everyone's voice is important regardless
Yes.
of your age.
Yes. And she loved it. Like she knew why she was there and she took advantage of it. And she knew that I was an eager listener and that I wasn't going to judge her. And that isn't really where kids live most of the time. They're always being judged for something. Their behavior is being judged constantly. Their work is being judged constantly. And they don't often get the opportunity to just say what they feel.
Absolutely. So you've alluded now to a couple of things that you are working on. You said there's a book maybe coming, and you've got this podcast that's going on. What do you have in the works if you're comfortable talking about it?
I've had so many things in the works that are not coming to fruition. Meaning I've started another continuation of this story like 92 times. Um, but nothing sticks. So that just tells me that I've not found the proper thread yet. But the demand is big enough where I have to listen to those readers who are like, what happens next? What happens next? I have to listen to them. There's some fresh energy there. And I think what I need to do is dig up my old notebooks, go to my diaries. I literally have my diaries from when I was a kid. Oh, and listen to this. This is not related, but I swear maybe this will help with the third book. So there in my diary from fifth grade, there are references to the real Scott Fenwick. And there is a scene in the Scott Fenwick diaries that I was so very proud of that wasn't based on a real story. It was where I actually had to use my imagination for a change and not just something that I had collected. And it, to me, was one of the best scenes of the whole book. And it made me cry and it made me feel. And it's this moment between the where they're finding each other for the very first time. And in true seventh grade fashion, the way that he shows his affection for her is by taking her shoe. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. I'm going to win a Newbery just for this scene. I swear to God. And then I was teaching a class called Creative Journaling, inspired by Taylor Swift, to fourth and fifth graders, and which is the joy of my life, by the way. I love it. And I decided to share some of my diary entries with them as they were writing in their own diaries. And I found a diary entry from fifth grade in which Scott Fenwick, the real Scott Fenwick, took my shoe. I didn't make it up. I thought I made it up. But it happened in real life. It was like November 17th, 1979. Scott Fenwick ran away with my shoe. And that was the thing that, so I I wasn't, it wasn't an official crush until he took my shoe. Because what I wrote was, he ran away with my shoe. Now I think he's cute. And
Oh,
here we go. And then 46 years later, I'm writing about it in a fiction book called The Scott Fenwick Diaries. But I'm just so amazed that I wrote this whole thing thinking that I made it up, and I didn't.
it was imprinted on your memory anyway.
It was
Oh,
imprinted. It was stuck back there and it needed to come out. So I will consult. I'll go back to those diaries. I'll go back to my notebooks. I have to start collecting again. And I think once I get an index card, a pile of index cards of stories, I can get going on my third, on the continuation of this story. But then to your point, I have a day job, which is this Gen X pop culture podcast called the Pop Culture Preservation Society. And we call it your Gen X childhood in a podcast. And we talk about all the TV shows that we watch, the music that we listen to. We just did a whole thing on Jaws. Saturday Night Fever is coming up. We've done things about Grease. And it's research heavy, it's expression heavy, it's creativity heavy. And so sometimes that takes up my creative energy, and I have to be careful to put some guardrails around that so I have a little bit left to keep going with Scott Fenwick and Millie. Um, but you can see where having a Gen X podcast, which is celebrating the pop culture nuggets of my childhood, is scratching the same itch. I'm doing the same thing. I'm talking about watching Happy Days on Tuesday nights with my family. And it is all that thing about I'm still resolving things within me from my childhood.
and it obviously still resonates with you if you can spend your days reminiscing about all of this and it's
Absolutely.
still holding your attention.
It's still holding my attention. And I think right now it's even more important than ever, because what we're doing is we're talking about analog times. And it's a way of not drinking the Kool-Aid about the times in which we live now, in with AI and with social media, and the way that we operate each day is so vastly different from when we grew up in an analog age. And as we know, Gen Zers are sort of pining for that analog era. And they're looking back in time and trying to adopt, who's collecting vinyl records right now? It's Gen Zers, right? Some of them are getting iPods because they want things to be simpler. And so it's a good way to stay grounded and to not get too wrapped up in this digital world as it spirals out of control, because that really is what's happening right now. Is it's spiraling out of control. Where is it going to end? Now we have AI companions. um, you know and so it's grounding, and it's a reminder to pick up a pen and paper, to listen to music in a slow fashion instead of just pressing, I don't like the song, press forward, I don't like the song, press forward. No, when you listen to a vinyl record, you listen to the songs all the way through, every single one. It's a way of slowing things down.
I really like that analogy.
Hmm.
So, Kristen, I've asked you a lot of questions today, but what's the question that I didn't ask you that you hoped I would?
You know what I always want to ask people? And what I always want other interviewers to ask everybody, literally everybody, because I want to know this from everybody. I like to know what people read when they were kids. Like, what were the books that really stuck with them and were important to them? Because we all had them. We all had them. Um, so for me, there's no underestimating the role that Judy Blume played in my life. Like, she was my other mother, basically. And I've only written two fan letters in my life, and they were both to Judy Blume. One was in 1979, and one was like 5 years ago when I was an adult. Um, so I love to hear what people are reading. My favorite book in sixth grade was The Westing Game. In third grade, it was A Cricket in Times Square. I loved A Secret Garden. Um, Deanie and Forever, my God, Forever like raced around my classroom. I think I was in fourth grade when I read Forever. I had no idea what they were talking about. No clue, but I learned a lot nonetheless. Um, and I'm wondering if anyone out there read the Carolyn Haywood books. B is for Betsy and Betsy's Little Star. Those are so old school. And I think they probably came from our moms. Like, our moms read them when they were little. And I'm wondering if there are fans out there of B is for Betsy. So I want to know, what books did you read when you were a kid?
Oh, good question. Um, I remember reading Nancy Drew. I was
Oh
very,
yeah.
very big into Nancy Drew. I read. It's funny. I read The Hobbit in third grade. It was a
Third grade. Oh my
yeah,
God.
it was required reading in third grade. And
What?
I know, yeah, it took me a little while to kind of get around it. And I was like, maybe I should try Lord of the Rings. But instead, I went to the library and I found Lord of the Flies. And I was like, surely this is the same. It is not. It's not the
Same.
same.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, but a lot of the books that I read were more into that fantasy, like Redwall. Even Madeleine L'Engle was a really big favorite for me also.
Hmm.
I was a big reader, and there was one day, I was older at this point, but the seventh Harry Potter book had come out, and I was um, teaching a summer camp of eighth graders, and I knew that they all had had enough time to read it, and that they were all going to spoil it for me. And so the whole day, I just spent the whole day reading, and my parents at one point just like took the book, and they were
Oh,
like, "We are going to go eat, and you're going to leave this here." I was like, "Okay."
the
Uh,
reading intervention.
but yeah, a lot of those ones that kind of step away from reality, those were my go-tos.
That's interesting. So you were part of the Harry Potter. Um, that's like peak middle grade right there.
Hmm.
Um, I was sort of reaching um, I was reaching peak librarian when Harry Potter came out, and I was invited on a TV show, like local TV show, because they wanted to know like what is the deal? What is the deal with Harry Potter? And I felt so important going on and talking about Harry Potter. And did I have any answers? No, I had no answers. I had no answers. We were all just speculating, but it's a phenomenon we'll be talking about for generations, I think. And now we have this quote unquote middle grade crisis where sales of middle grade books are down and rates of reading independently and reading for pleasure are going down for middle grade readers. And I don't think it's overblown. I do think it's a crisis. That being said, there are many reasons for that to be happening, the pandemic being one, learning loss being another. Um, but I think a lot of it is that we're basing it on peak Harry Potter. And that wasn't normal. Those were not normal times. And middle grade sales I don't think they'll ever be that way ever again. And we have to figure out what we're going to do about that.
That's really interesting to hear that from the other perspective of like
Mhm.
how you were observing it at the time as a librarian. And um, yeah, I think we have such an abundance of awesome middle grade books now that getting them into the hands of readers should be easy, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, there's a lot of big reasons why that's not happening as much. And I'm glad that there's also graphic novels that are woven into this too, where kids who might not be as comfortable reading a traditional novel have an access point to middle grade literature.
Well, and I really love, parents will complain about this all day long, but this trend of publishing older novels in graphic novel format, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think this is a gateway for kids. I think it's a way of reviving stories that never should have disappeared in the first place. A new graphic novel version of Tuck Everlasting just came out, I think today. I think today and I'm so excited to read this and I'm so excited to introduce it to kids because maybe they've missed it because they think it's an old-fashioned book. But I think we're living in this era, both with graphic novels and with audiobooks. I think we're living in this era where we're acknowledging that all those people who were quote unquote struggling readers might just consume language in a different way. And it's not that audiobooks and graphic novels are there to help them. Graphic novels and audiobooks are there for them. Like maybe this is the way they'll do it. This is the way that they do it. I was just that lucky person who consumed language the way they were teaching it. And everybody else who didn't, well, sucks for you, I guess. But now we have something for them that we didn't before. It's a good time we're
Absolutely.
living in,
It is. And I'm glad that so going into librarianship, as you know, there's a lot of kind of big feelings that come from some people as far as like, well, graphic novels, that's not really reading, and
right?
audiobooks, that's not really reading. But there's this turnaround that's happening now where people are realizing, no, that counts. And some are reading, oh
Absolutely.
yeah, anything. You're reading a
Yeah.
book, that counts. You
Yeah.
have this audiobook, that counts, So I like that there's more of that where no matter how a person is accessing that literature or digesting it, it's
Yeah.
still reading.
It's about the language and the stories at the end of the day. And we don't all read the same way. It's just a massive acknowledgement that has never been done, that we don't all consume language the same way. And for reluctant parents who don't want to, I hear so many things from parents, from it's not real reading to, well, it's a waste of money because they read it in half an hour and then they're done. But what I like to tell parents is that first thing, basically, most importantly, is that this might be the way your child consumes language. And you want to you want to give them as much practice as possible in whatever way they consume it to continue to hone those skills. But what we're finding with graphic novels is that they don't read them one time. They end the book and then they start it again, and they might read it 10 times, where they're probably not going to read The Hobbit 10 times. Well, actually, my son might, but most people are not going to read The Hobbit 10 times. And that's the clincher for them. They're like, oh, I get it. So the cost per use will go down if they continue to read it over and over again. We just have to find the entry points for the parents. It's mostly the parents. I'm finding teachers to be very much on board. It's mostly the parents who are like, I don't get this.
But honestly, if your kid is reading, your kid is reading, and that's great.
Every time your kid is reading a graphic novel is a time they're not on Instagram.
True. That is so true.
Count yourself lucky.
Kristin, where is a great place for people to find out more about you and your books and things that might be coming down the line?
You can find me at my website, KristinNilsenBooks.com. I already mentioned my Substack newsletter called Biblio Crush, and that is also at Kristin Nilsen Books. And I think my next, I'm really trying to put this out there for people. I think I'm having a little existential crisis with my social media at the moment. And so I think my next Substack newsletter will be called This is My Brain. This is Instagram. This is my brain on Instagram. Any questions? And so if you would like to read that, sign up for a newsletter on Substack, because I am on Instagram at kristin.nilsen.writer, but I'm having some real difficulties right now with what is happening, particularly for children in the world of social media, and what role do I play in that. So I really have a good time on Instagram, and I love even making content for Instagram. I really love it, but I'm very conflicted. Nonetheless, you can find me there. And because of that conflict, I'm also dipping my toe into Blue Sky. So you can find me, I guess I'm Kristin Nilsen on Blue Sky. I don't know. I'm so new to it. I don't know. But I'm trying to make Blue Sky my home instead of Instagram. Will that work? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm so confused.
That's
That was
okay.
a long answer to your question.
As long as we can find you somewhere, then
Yeah,
that's
I just
great.
need somewhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. Listeners, if Worldwide Crush or the Scott Fenwick Diaries sound like great fits for you, I hope you look for them wherever you get your books. And thank you so much, Kristin, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much. This was fun.